Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rachel Cooke, COO of Darden Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more. Hi, I'm Rachel Cooke, the host of our Excellence at Work podcast, and I'd like to warmly welcome you today. Joining me, we have Anne Trumbore from Darden Education. She is the Chief Digital Learning Officer for SANS Institute for Lifelong Learning. Welcome, Anne. It's great to have you with me today.
Thank you, Rachel. I am thrilled to be here, and hello to everybody listening.
And today we're going to be talking about driving R&R, retention and ROI through management pathways. We've done a lot of research here at Darden Hall Group to understand how learning is transpiring in the workplace and how education and professional institutions are enabling enabling learners to be impactful and to be adaptable and to be equipped with the right knowledge and skills to be able to not just excel in their jobs, but be able to adapt to new environments and to where the workplace needs them and be able to pivot at the right time. And our research is showing if you turn on the news, if you anywhere you go, our world is changing and it's continuously changing. And so are the ways in which we learn has to change. And, it's exciting to have Anne with me. I recently also had Ashley Williams, the CEO and CLO of Darden Executive Education with me just a little while ago and sharing her perspective on lifelong learning and how their institution is supporting this and kind of the new ways of thinking. They are also a sponsor at our Darden Hall Group Excellence Conference. We're excited to hear from them, and a multi-award winner from Darden Hall Group. So they are quite established, and it is my privilege, again, to have Anne with me today and sharing her perspective. And before we kind of dive into the topic, Anne, do you want to share a little bit about your background and your experience in the space and your journey?
Sure. So I am, like a lot of learning professionals, have had a somewhat circuitous path into workplace learning and adult learning. Mine included work in the entertainment business as a writer for 10 years, and then moved towards technology-enabled instruction, where I started at Stanford, and we were creating some what are now called AI-powered tutors, but where it was actually kind of me and some other folks behind the scenes. But thinking about adaptive learning, learning in place, learning when you need it, just in time, which was kind of revolutionary in the early 2000s. I went to a couple of Stanford startups. Coursera was one of them, and really helped R1 institutions think about adopting a technology in order to reach wider audiences. Then I went to the Wharton School, and really that's when I started working with companies quite a bit to think about scaling education to workers who hadn't necessarily had the opportunity to learn from business school professors, and really saw this big need for that and a huge appetite for it. In conjunction, I actually went to and completed my doctorate in corporate learning at Penn GSE, and really studied the correlation between how people learn in technology-enabled environments or online learning, and its correlation to their career success. And then today, one other point is, and this is important to mention because it's a lens through which I'm starting to look at things, is this year I'm a fellow at Stanford through this at Stanford Center for Longevity, the Education and Learning Futures Project. And we're really thinking about what does education look like now that we have the gift of longer lives? And so it's not just longer working lives, it's longer learning lives. And so, what does that mean for organizations, and how can they play more of a role in providing the kind of learning that people need to really advance themselves?
Fascinating. And I would imagine from when you did your PhD to even now, what's kind of the biggest things do you feel has changed in lifelong learning?
So I think there's, first of all, there's much more acceptance of digitally enabled learning, and also an understanding that just having access to a video is not enough, right? And so there are now, and I remember a CLO saying this to me, the large soft drink company, and she was like, I don't even know all the learning assets we have, right? We went from, in the early 2000s having a set of clearly defined learning assets, and now I don't even know all the ones that we have. What's effective? How do we measure it? These are new questions we're asking, right? Before it was how can I get access? Now it's how can we drive impact? How do we use those assets in a way that has the most benefit for the learner and also for the employer? And those are fascinating questions that are in the process of being answered.
And from a management standpoint, or looking at different management pathways, what do you see that's critical, as we look into 2025 or even further out, for you mentioned, we're looking really at impact, so what are the different, channels that managers or leaders should consider, or highly consider for their future?
Sure. So, one thing that I think would behoove organizations to do is to start thinking beyond talent development to talent identification. And so, our work that we did with the Burning Glass Institute, discovered that there are roughly 10 million workers that are in roles that are what we call skills aligned, meaning they've been working in a job, they have the skills needed to manage other folks, but they're hidden from HR because they may not have the right pedigree. That could mean a college degree, it could mean a graduate degree, it could be a certain kind of college or graduate degree, but they've got all this untapped talent. And over the past 20 years, it's been more of a buyer's market, right? Organizations have been like, all right, we'll move workers out, usher workers out, we'll bring new people in. That's how we'll solve our talent problems. I really believe that in the coming years, companies that learn how to identify their talent through learning opportunities and then develop that talent to drive retention are going to be more competitive and able to navigate, better in the future.
Interesting. And what types of, how do we get these people into, how do we bring awareness to them that these resources are available to them, and how do we bring awareness, or how do we identify who they are?
Right. So this is it's specific to each company. I can talk about a couple of different companies that we've worked with, and some of the ways they've done it. One company, one organization was a large retailer, and they knew that they hired a certain kind of person. They hired D1 athletes primarily to work in their stores. And so they were like, how can we create an environment where we can measure their adaptability, their ability to learn, their ability to translate that learning into deliverables, which in this case was sort of a strategy presentation on some of the company's bigger objectives. And so they used the program with a specific cohort to see who would rise to the top. So they actually used the performance of the learning program as, to see if folks had promotability. That's one, I mean, that takes a lot of upfront investment, a big vision, and, a clearly defined set of folks that you want to kind of sift through and identify, but it did work. That was very successful. It ran for multiple years, may still be running. Another is we're working with a company who does this, which is a nomination process. And so instead of, sort of HR or a more removed function in the organization, seeing who has potential, this company does surveys of the managers, and they ask different questions about, who do you think is ready? Who do you think can take the next step? And creating that culture where they're identifying with managers that there are these sort of escalators or pathways to move people up. And, you can nominate 3 people every year. Who's going to be this year? And that's created, this is again another multi-year engagement. It's starting to create a culture within the company where they're expecting to be on the lookout. Managers are on the lookout for who are my high potentials, who may not normally signal high potential, right, given their paper.
Right. And what do you see that first-time managers need to know? What type of skills do they need to know in being a manager?
Yeah, so that was really the focus of this research that we did. We had a hypothesis that, that there would be some commonality across different industry verticals. So we looked at across 12 different industry verticals, and there are 4 buckets of management skills that are obtained across all those verticals, everything from retail to healthcare to construction. And they are communication, data analysis, leadership and initiative, and business operations. And business operations changes slightly. That's the most variable. It does include some finance, a little bit of supply chain, but definitely communications, data analysis, leadership and initiative were absolutely seen across all these verticals. And that's across 10 million people. So it was a pretty significant finding.
We've seen somewhat of a similar or parallel to what we're looking at when we look at managers, and when we have if you look at our framework around the competencies, it's a bit more broader because we're not just looking at managers; it's kind of leaders, and then you can narrow in more specific on different skill sets.
That's right.
And then leader versus everyone else as far as a learning professional, and we take a look at different areas across the job functions of HR, and it is complex if you take a look at it, and companies are continuously trying to simplify it into but not too much that you're taking away what is needed. And so how can these managers acquire the knowledge that they need? And what time frame do you think that we should allocate towards this learning curve?
Right. So I do think it's not coincidental. I mean, we know, we all as learning professionals know that, it takes 6 to 9 months, being aggressive for a new hire to get up to speed. In that time, I do believe you can get the skills you need to begin a management journey as long as the context is available to you. What that means is, you can't throw seeds on a driveway and expect flowers, right? So you've got to have the right environment. That environment includes opportunities for feedback from internal stakeholders, as well as applied projects that are evaluated by both the business school professors, is where we've seen success, and also the managers. So this feedback loop is really important. And we find that that's something that's missing with a lot of, particularly, online educational offerings right now, as people come in and they do it and they're like, that was great. And then we expect them to magically inhabit this new persona of a manager, right? Because you learn some phrases and you learn some things. So really scaffolding the application of that with coaching from, internal stakeholders, as well as obviously for business schools. So in our case, it's business schools professors, together helping them come to this understanding of how to be, because that's really what you're seeing. You're transforming an individual. It's not just acquiring the skills.
Right. And then when companies are looking to advance within, some of that learning curve is shorter
Right.
if they have done the proper assessment and selection of those high potentials, because they have the experience in the business acumen already to some extent.
Yeah.
Maybe not everything that they need, but they already have a head start than hiring someone from out than within. And what other reasons why do you think companies should create these pathways?
Well, I think if a company's trying to future proof itself, right, and think about being competitive for the next 5, 10, 15 years and beyond. I mean, you said it yourself, and all the research you guys do shows this, which is that nothing is constant except change. And we know with new technologies coming on that adaptability, flexibility, engagement, all of these soft things that people hate because they're hard to measure, are critical for having a workforce that can respond and respond quickly. And so if you become a learning organization and really start to develop pathways for people to advance internally, you're going to drive engagement. You're going to drive retention. Our research shows that people stay 30% longer if they get, a promotion at the company. And then you're also going to drive further adaptability of the organization, because someone who's able to learn, take a new role and manage is going to manage people differently because they've been able to transform themselves, rather than somebody who's brought in and feels like, well, I have to achieve X goal. And when that's done, then I've earned my paycheck and I'm on to my next gig.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. So true. And again, I think there's a lot of interesting things that we're going to see coming out of this year and next year if we keep following the same kind of pattern of how
Yeah.
fast things are changing. What are some of your predictions, or what do you see coming that we may not be aware of?
Sure. So one thing is this idea of longer working lives. People are going to have to work for longer. They may want to work for longer. But as you've been given this amazing gift where many of us will have excellent health into our 70s. And we want to be engaged. And there's a lot of knowledge baked into someone who's been working at a company or just working in roles, has a variety of expertise. How is that going to get unlocked to drive company profits? Right now, it's unlocked in a sharing economy, right? Well, I'll share my knowledge with you. I'll mentor folks. These are all great. But
Mhm.
how do you formalize? How do you unlock, your 55 plus group? How do you offer, opportunities?
Mhm.
And once you start doing that, I think then you're going to be able to start to unlock folks who need to move in and out of work because of, caring responsibilities at home, right? So you're sort of developing new ways of working. Maybe it's a more flexible schedule. Maybe there's a more hub and spoke model of knowledge sharing where you have internal folks who are responsible for evangelizing or advocating for different priorities. We're in process still another multi-year commitment with a large financial services firm, and they actually identified 400 what they call advocates within the company, and they come for specific training, and then their part of their role is to advocate for change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's working really well, because it's one thing to have a disembodied person on a screen with a professor title saying this is what you should do, and it's another thing to sit in a room with somebody that and have lunch with them and have them explain how why it's important to change what we're doing and how it's going to benefit themselves and the company. So I do think that there's a revolution coming in the way that we think about talent development that expands beyond like come in, work 50 hours a week, move up the ladder, and and it's a gatekeeping process where it gets thinner and thinner.
Yeah, and we've hear so many people, they can't wait to retire, they can't wait to go park themselves on the beach and read a book or
Right.
whatever it might be, play golf.
Right.
It'd be interesting how we kind of assess people, and are they staying in the workplace because they have to?
Right.
Are they staying because they want to, or are they not sure? Because sometimes people think they can't wait to retire, but unless they have a very, they have, a defined plan for what they are going to be doing, they can lose a sense of that.
Exactly.
So I think, as employers, think about this generation that's staying longer in the workplace. I think we need to take into consideration all the different desires or needs or ways that we could connect with them to make sure that they are staying, and they're not just staying because they have to, but
Right.
also if they are staying, they feel valued, and they also bring value back to the organization, because there's a lot of opportunity to retain this generation. We're going to be talking at a conference. We have one of our general sessions is on multi-generations in the workplace,
Right.
and how to connect with them. So I think that's a really interesting topic, because there's certainly differences, but then there's also similarities, and it's being able to kind of bridge everyone together effectively, and then providing the right tools to be able to support them. So I think that's a really interesting topic, and something, of course, that's very timely for you.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad. I can't wait for that session. And I do think the more work I do, and talking to other folks researching these different populations. So, people taking time off to care for family, or people who decide not to go to college right off the bat. Everyone wants to work in some way. They want to belong. They want to feel valued. They want community. They want to share their knowledge, and they want to feel useful. They either don't want to or can't
Mm-hmm.
do traditional 50 hours a week.
Right.
So are we really going to leave
Mm-hmm.
all that talent on the sidelines with all the societal implications that brings?
Right.
Because a company who can figure out how to start doing these things is really going to set themselves up for success in the future.
I do. And I think sometimes not thinking about the workplace as the traditional 40-hour work week, or whatever it might be, depending on your industry and job role.
Right.
But if you can get from someone a true, whether it's 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours of their time, and that they are contributing wholeheartedly that time, not just part of that time, even though you might be working 40 hours, but you're not really that engaged with it sometimes.
Right.
Distracted, or, so I think that's interesting in itself, because, how you really think about how you're engaging and how you're contributing and what kind of impact you have are key drivers to measuring the impact of someone's ability.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, if you think about, nurses or doctors or, firemen, um, they do shifts. If any one of that group for some reason says, well, I'm only doing 2 shifts a week for the next 6 months, do we say, oh, you're not a nurse, you're not a doctor, you're not a fireman? No, we don't. But if you're a marketing professional, we say, oh, no, but you're not a marketer anymore. I mean,
Right.
that's bonkers, right? It's
Right.
bonkers. And so we have systems in which people can pull back, engage, but in smaller, increments, and then step back in. We have industries where this works and is commonplace.
Mhm.
We just should think about expanding that thinking. It's not going to be exact, but
Sure.
what would it mean to have a marketing department where someone is really engaged for 20 hours, or maybe in that 20 hours their job is to stay on top of every new development
Mhm.
in the technology and then formulate ways to teach it
Mhm.
to other folks in the department. Like, just there's a I'm getting really excited because there's so much opportunity to think really creatively about this.
Yeah, and I think that's where technology plays a key role, being able to truly track the productivity
Yes.
and to be able to monitor and to be able to pick up where somebody may have left off, but
Yeah.
being able to have that, make sure that it's succinct. And so that's where um, proper, organization and process and data comes really critical.
Yes.
So, and I think part of that, not just having someone there for 10 hours, but making sure you understand what they're doing, not to
Yeah.
police them, but to really truly be able to then have somebody else pick up from where they left off. And I think that's where the communication comes in. So they
Hmm.
understand their part in what they need to contribute and how they communicate and how they track it
Yeah.
is going to be paramount for this to work in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is it reminds me, the difference between, time-based pay and project-based pay.
Right.
So, super early in my career, I worked in the entertainment business and, you got hired for a movie, you got hired for a project. Like, the time was immaterial. It just had to get done,
Right.
right? It had to be good. So, you're just evaluated on different things rather than you showed up and you brought cookies and all these other things. Oh, by the way, you also produce. So, again, I think we have models elsewhere. We just need to start breaking down the barriers and thinking about, letting them inform each other to create more of an ecosystem that you so rightly said at the beginning.
Right. And I'm sure coming from your industry or the entertainment industry, probably have so many good stories to share.
Yes.
I have to do another episode just
Absolutely.
bringing on what's happening in Hollywood.
I know.
We
It's
are,
like,
I don't know if you saw for our gala, we are doing a Hollywood glamour theme to it.
oh my gosh.
It's like a red carpet kind of theme to the award winners. So it should be a lot of fun. And
That
yeah, so I think we have a lot in common without realizing today. Look, we're
yes,
dressed the same.
I know.
I love it. We'll have to coordinate our wardrobe for the event coming up.
100%.
Well, Anne, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and for joining me today. I'm excited to learn more from your experiences coming up here in just a few weeks. Is there any takeaways, anything that you want to share with our audience?
I just want to say that, we talked a lot about the research. We gave some real world examples, but we just keep seeing over and over again that using management and leadership development programs to uncover hidden talent, to identify, uncover, and then develop really does benefit the company, the individual, but then also really it is going to benefit, our society. So it's not just an expense, really. It really will drive ROI.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for sharing. Also, thank you for being a platinum sponsor at our Excellence Conference, Group Excellence 2025. We'll also get to celebrate your award accomplishments for 2024, for receiving leadership awards and learning and development awards from Brendan Hall Group. So it'll be an exciting week ahead for everyone, and I can't wait for our audience to get to learn more about the great work that you do, and to also hear from Ashley Williams and you. Thank you for joining me today. Take care. Have a nice week.
Thank you, Rachel. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks.
Me too.